Welcome, everyone. This is Mike Meriton with the EDM Council, and I'd like to introduce the next topic, which is Tales from the Trenches, CDMC Lessons Learned from the Industry First Test Case. And I'd like to welcome our speakers today, which is John Wills, Field CTO with Alation. Welcome, John. Good to have you today. And also
Mike.
Matt Turner, Director of Industry Strategy, also with Alation. And gentlemen, just a couple of thoughts on my part. You were on the front line in one of the world's first implementations of conducting a CDMC assessment, and you were working with Snowflake, and also we had KPMG involved doing the formal assessment. So you did this. You were involved in a real CDMC initiative, and the audience that's listening in, they're all at different stages of downloading the framework, applying it in their environment, but you're the first. So we'd love to hear from you, and I'm going to turn it over now to John to help set context. John, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mike. I am actually going to toss to Matt to get us started, but that was a great lead in. Thank you, Mike. We are super excited to be here to share our lessons learned, as the title of the presentation indicates. So Matt, why don't you take us away, and then I'll join in and actually demo a little bit of what we created as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And Mike, when you say you really mean John. John dug in and did a lot of this hard work.
So, just, and as you know, you in the plural sense of you were there on the front line, and that, to me, that's really special that you all were involved in doing that. Phenomenal experience. So I think everyone is going to want to hear, how did this work and what were the practical lessons about doing this?
Absolutely. And my job is to get everybody there to see actually in a live data catalog some of these test cases. But I am going to begin with a quick introduction. And first of all, quick introduction to Alation. So we're Alation, we're the data catalog company, and we have a mission to empower a curious and rational world. And we do this by making sure everyone in your organization has access to data and knows how to use it. And one of the biggest topics across our conversations with customers and partners has been cloud migration, the changing role of data as you move to the cloud. And just to give you guys an example, here's some of what we've heard. Let's start first with Matt Glickman, who, as Mike just mentioned, was part of the Snowflake team that got us involved in this work. And we had a chance later in the year to join Matt at the Snowflake Financial Services Data Cloud launch. And Matt gave a great overview for this moment in time when he said the data cloud is the disruptive force needed to actually break down silos. And what he's talking about is this moment where critical workloads in industries that are heavily compliant, that have heavily governed and compliance, are moving to the cloud. And it's really a unique moment because they're not moving to the cloud to take advantage of cost or operations. They're moving to the cloud to take advantage of innovation and data-driven innovation that starts with breaking down silos. Our next voice is from David Stoddard of TDWI. David picked up on this. We did a great webinar with David about moving to the cloud. They've done some great research. It's really a resource I want to make sure everybody has available. And part of what David said was about this direction. He said, moving to the cloud reduces fragmentation, improves data access, enables data governance. And again, we're talking about these benefits of cloud data structures, and interestingly, how governance is actually something that can be enhanced, and as we can see from our next person with Anthony, can actually become an asset. So I always like to leave to the customers last. Anthony Seraphim of Texas Mutual joined us on this webinar, and he talked about how the cloud move was a real opportunity to rethink your data strategy. Take the old siloed approach, rethink it, and move to but in doing that, you had to have what he said is moving to the cloud requires a strong data governance foundation. So you really need to take advantage of that opportunity. Think about it as that moment when data can go on the offense, can be a real asset, but also data governance itself can be a way to let you really leverage your data. So this is largely why we've been so excited to hear about the CDMC. This is a big topic of conversation. We had a fantastic panel at the top. Mike did a great job of bringing together some of the leaders on the big data space, the big players in the data space. But in case you just missed it, here's a little bit of background on the CDMC. Framework defines the parameters for moving sensitive data to the cloud. It's a comprehensive framework. So there are 6 components, ways of organizing it. You've probably seen some of the graphics with 14 capabilities, and we're going to talk about those 14 capabilities, but there's 37 subcomponents. It's 150 pages worth. It's a deep, deep document that really lays out the roadmap for moving to the cloud and includes things like governance, cataloging, privacy, topics that are really, really important to us and our customers. So go to the next slide. That's why we're so excited to be able to get involved early on, as Mike said, and get in hands-on with the Snowflake team to create the industry's first test cases for all 14 of the controls, executed with Snowflake team led by John Wells on our side, and have a successful assessment by KPMG in the fall of 2021. So before I turn it over to John, I just want to come back to the top and say we're really excited to have had this chance, but more excited to share with you some of this work, the real world learnings. And we're also very excited to hear from you today. So if you're in this crowd, in this audience, this is bi-directional. We'd love to have some questions, but right now I want to get to it. So John, as I say in the game show world, show the folks what they're going to see.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. So you can see on the screen there the second major bullet point. So the test case did include a ton of material, but documentation. There was a lot of collaboration. I'll give you a sense for how we did that, and then test case examples, and I'll actually walk through some of those. But just for those of you that are wondering, okay, what was the setup for the environment? It was multi-cloud. It was multi-geography. So we had multiple Snowflake instances in different cloud providers. So you see the blue boxes in the lower portion. So AWS, GCP, Azure, with different Snowflake instances. And then what you see on the top is that we had an Alation cloud-based catalog with some sidecar capabilities that we offer, including data quality, microservice integration, and Alation Analytics, which is our analytics data store for understanding everything that's happening from a governance perspective with the catalog. So that was the setup. Now I'm going to drop out of this and we'll go over to a live demo. What you can see on your screen now is the we call the catalog an instance, right? So it's an instance of our Alation catalog, and it's the one that we use with Snowflake and KPMG to do the work. And what you see right away is that we configured the homepage for governance activities. Our customers often customize this in many different ways, but we oriented it towards the governance work that we were doing. So you see stewardship links around the left, auditing, PIA tagging. We have really great deep integration with Snowflake. So we integrated with Snowflake data policies. I'll probably show you a bit of that in just a minute. And then what you see down below is that we pulled all the resources in from the EDM Council, including the CDMC model. And we basically built really in a matter of hours, an environment where we could completely do our work together to work on these different controls, including setting up a glossary just by pulling in all the DCAM glossary terms really quickly, setting up a shared data sharing agreement registry, privacy impact assessment registry, and so forth. So just to give you, a glimpse of how we did the work, we went ahead and connected to all of the Snowflake sources that I showed you in the slide a minute ago. So those are all tucked away over there on the left. Just so you know that, we connected to it, and then we were working live against it with this environment. And then what we did was we went out and really quickly set up a table in this wiki page we call an article for all of the different key controls. And then for each of these key controls, we hyperlink to a standard structure for that control. So we have the description of it, the commentary that we made, and I'll come back to the importance of commentary and best practices in a few minutes, assumptions that we made in order to solve for the requirements, our narrative of our approach, and then we did the KPMG test specification. So the things they were looking for to evaluate, and then we cross-referenced to the evidence that we supplied. So we have screenshots, but there's obviously hyperlinks to different places in the catalog. So KPMG, in doing their assessment, could look at the live examples. And then in the catalog, we also have this conversational capability. And so all three parties were able to, asynchronously work and just converse about about how we were doing the work. So that's a little bit on the setup of the environment, how we quickly stood up all these things. And then that's a little bit on how we did the work in that interactive asynchronous style. Now let me spend the next few minutes diving into some of the examples. We're obviously not going to have time to show you live an example of every single control, but we can dip our toe in the water. And again, I'll remind you, as Matt did, if you have questions, please ask those. And we're going to have a Q&A session in a few minutes, so we'll be happy to address those. And then we'd always be happy to do in-depth sessions on all this stuff. So let's take a look at one of the requirements. One of the requirements of or key control was classification. And so what we have in the catalog is what are called catalog sets. And we really quickly took a library of PII rules, think of them as rules that we have, and we loaded them into the catalog. So that's why you see all of these items listed on the left: account, address, age, birth date, and then all of the rules for each one of these, right? So for instance, you have, just to pick on birth date here for a second, if you look at birth date and you look at the rules, it's going to scan across all of the data sources in the catalog. And of course, you can control that, but we told it in this fourth column over here from the right to look at all Snowflake data sources. And based on those rules, it's going to evaluate what tables, columns, right, et cetera, schemas match those rules. So what are potential PII fields in data assets based on those rules? And then we tell it, okay, if you find, for every one of those you find, do something. So now most of this screen I kind of left blank, but the exciting thing is down here in the lower right, I told it to go ahead and tag that. I told it to tag it with birth date, and I told it to set it as PII classification candidate. Now I'll come back to the significance of having that be a candidate in just a second. Let's go out and pick on one of these for a second. So let's go out and pick on, I don't know, let's take this C birth date. If we look at this one and we scroll down, you'll notice, actually, let me just pick on another one I think will be a better example. Let's try C birth country in the corp database. Okay, this one is going to be, first of all, you notice the grant and the role information that have been pulled in dynamically from Snowflake here. And that satisfied another one of the requirements of the CDMC. Hold on just one second. I think I got sidetracked here for a second. All right, let's take this one and take a look. All right, so what we see is tagging down here in the lower right-hand corner. This is what I was fumbling around trying to get to in the first place. You'll notice there's 3 tags. Now, you're not surprised by seeing birth date because we saw that in the rule that was set up. But why do we see address? Why do we see nationality? We see that because if you look at the name of this field, it's C birth country. So we have the word country included as well. So what that does for us is you have to remember there's this bursting or this scaling capability happening where catalog sets are looking to tag from multiple dimensions. So it's telling us that this column that's been cataloged is potentially has 3 types of PII data in it. And the reason that the significance of candidate is that now you can automatically notify a steward to go take a look and verify and actually mark that as verified PII information, right? And that was another part of the requirements of classification, was that you could report on what was verified and classified and what was not inside of the cataloged environment in terms of sensitive data. So this really quick, just add water, instant classification set of rules, this ability to go across all data sets, this ability then to allow stewards to go in and verify the classification. So that's how we did that, by pointing out all of those Snowflake databases. Now I'm going to move into another example, which is data sovereignty and cross-border movement. This one is probably one of the more complex requirements of CDMC. It really deals with, if you look on the right-hand side, this topic of an origin of data, right? The origin of data, the life cycle of the data, and the security classification of the data. You know, someone sitting in the EU accessing data in the US or the opposite, or different combinations of jurisdictions, you have to have automated ways of understanding that and then taking action based on that. So one of the things you'll see in the conversations, right, this social capability within the product is that we use what we call policy bots to actually monitor in the background, and the bot sees this combination of conditions, and it triggers and spawns action. It opens a task for the steward, so they have to go take action on that, right? So this policy bots was a very dynamic part of the way we solved. I'll show you one other thing. Part of the policy bots were driving the requirement to have data sharing agreements, right? For if different parts of the organization wanted to share data, they kind of have to have this brokered contract, the data sharing agreement. So part of those combination of fields triggered the need for this. And so here's where the data sharing agreement is. You'll notice it describes the purpose, which is a required field. It has who's going to provide the data, who's going to consume it, the high-level policies, governance policy for the data, any exceptions to those policies. And then it also links off to the low-level masking, data quality, et cetera policies. So again, this is one of the more complex requirements of the controls that we were able to accomplish by this combination of data sharing agreement plus monitoring with policy bots, multiple conditions. I think the last example that I'll probably have time to touch on is just data lineage. Everybody loves data lineage. And one of the requirements was to be able to do cross-cloud, cross-system lineage. And so what we see here in this diagram, I'll just try to zoom in a little bit more, make it easier to see. We actually have an example of that we built up. And so what we have here is a table called household demographics that sits in the financial schema in one of those cloud instances. We have some transformation happening where it's pulled out through a Snowflake command that's called a copy into command. And you can see the command here. And then that landed that data in an S3 file. And then another command, another process or a transformational process took over and transferred that data out of the S3 file to a third cloud environment, which in this case was the corporate data schema, right? So cross-cloud, cross-system lineage, which is, again, one of the key requirements of the controls to be able to track that. So we were really, really excited to do this work. Again, I'd love to get into more detail with all of you. But that's probably all we're going to have time for in the demo right now. I'm going to break left back to the slides, and I'll wrap with some observations. And then after I do that, we'll move right into your questions. So it was super exciting, as I said, to do this and be the first to do this, but we definitely learned a lot. Some of the key things we learned, first of all, CDMC is not how to do something, it's what to do. And so what we learned is we have to provide our best practices in that commentary, and then what assumptions we use to help give you guidance for helping you accelerate your thinking about how to approach these. So that's exactly why we've written all that commentary, assumptions, the narrative on how we approach this, because you're really going to need that to think about the how-to. Secondly, that jurisdictions and policy enforcement, as I just demonstrated with that example, is one of the more complex areas. And so you really need to think deeply and carefully about that. Third, you'll have to use some level of automated monitoring and triggering. We use the policy bots. They're going to be absolutely necessary for looking and watching in the background, and then pushing and being proactive about automating tasks and pushing those tasks out. And then last but not least, and this probably goes without saying, but this is going to take an incremental approach. You're going to have to crawl, walk, run for sure to build up a level of sophistication over time, because there's a lot here in these controls. And so you're really not going to be able to attack it and accomplish it all at once. You're going to have to do it incrementally. All right, well, Matt, that was a whirlwind. Matt and Mike, that was a whirlwind through the demo.
Yeah, it took a little more
I
than.
hope it was. I hope it made sense. But
No, it was great,
I'm excited to take questions if anybody
John and
has
Matt,
them.
it was great to also have you just jump right on to the live platform and show it in action. It's just, I think, testimony to the usability of what allowed this project to go briskly, though there was obviously a rigor that KPMG went through just in examining. In fact, the team at KPMG that helped do this is they got guidance from the team that does SOC 2 audits, which that's been in the marketplace for quite a few years, and certainly for US-based organizations, that's essentially a mandate that you have to pass those. That team helped write the test procedures. They were reviewed by the EDM Council CDMC work group, and then which is lots of companies evaluating it, and then published. And you all used these eventually in your work and donated all the results back, which is fabulous. One other note I just want to share is for anyone that's a Snowflake user, also the Snowflake team decided not to make this a closed box or black box exercise. I think it's over 5,000 of their customers worldwide that may want to test, can we do any of these scripts in Microsoft Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud? All three platforms were running, and they put all these test scripts, I think with your help, guys, up in a GitHub repository, which means it's open, you can download it and run it and do these tests for your own environment. So all good news. So let me throw a question, guys, at you, which is, it's my favorite in any panel discussion, is all fine and dandy. You all did it. That's great. Lots of eyes looking in. But for our audience, if they're looking at CDMC and they want to get going, where do you start? And then there's a corollary to it, which is nothing happens without a business case. So if you're the audience saying, okay, lots of things, I have a big, my medium or large size business, many places to start. What are the ingredients of the things you would focus in if you were them? And then what would be the ingredients of the business case?
So John, I'll let you get started with where to start, and then we'll come back out for some context around the strategy.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, business case is a business case. We have lots of examples of how to put that together. And we start with building up, metrics and assumptions that can be, attested to by the sponsors internally. So we'd be happy to help you with that and to think about that. But just in terms of where to start with the standard, I mean, obviously get educated on CDMC, go through, and get the certifications because that learning is going to be invaluable. And then I would say, you kind of got to start, this is going to sound like we're just, trying to pitch ourselves, but honestly, a catalog is the fundamental component. So you've got to have a catalog, and you got to start ingesting your metadata. That is the starting point. You can't do any of this other stuff if you don't start there. So that is the first best place to start. Once you've got all your metadata unified and coming in one place, now you can actually start to prioritize the requirements and pick them off.
And I just wanted to pick on, just come back to the overall trajectory. The reason we started out our conversation with some of the voices about moving to the cloud is ultimately that is the context of the business case that you may have internally. So an organization, if you're thinking about it from cost savings or optimization or something on a data structure, data strategy level, that's going to get you so far. There's a much larger business case around taking advantage of new capabilities, taking advantage of innovation. And I mean, I'm just going to come back to the, just hearing Matt Glickman from Snowflake just talk about the opportunity as you move to the cloud to truly change how you're thinking about your data. And I know that all sounds like it's really way above. It's not the business case of the moment, but what I'm kind of encouraging people to do is link those tactical steps to that larger strategy. So understand your data, again, our customers like Anthony, who said the data governance, which is the catalog plus the enforcement, is critical to moving to the cloud. Now, and this is again the reason we're so glad about CDMC, is that it's not an independent activity to figure out how to put that into action. You've got these capabilities, you've got these frameworks, you have a roadmap. And John sort of talked about how the catalog is key, and you talked about how the interaction's great, but it is a big part of going down the road with making that investment, but making sure it's tied to that much larger picture.
Yeah, that makes a whole bunch of sense. So no doubt the team on this panel right now, and those listening in, would like to learn a little more about what Alation can do to help speed up this journey. Do you gentlemen mind sharing a little bit about what you all do and how people can get in touch with you?
Well, I think great minds think alike. I think there just came a question. So John, I'm going to read it because it's your policy bots. But talk about policy bots. What is Alation? How does Alation leverage AI and ML or knowledge graph or other things?
And thank you to Mark
to
McQueen.
Generate metadata. So actually, perfect timing. Yeah. And John, you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you don't see behind that great interface? There's a ton of automation.
Yeah, there really is. It's hard to give it justice in a quick answer, but I'll try. So when we pull metadata in, we're not just connecting to a database and pulling in your father's technical metadata, data types and links and field names. We actually are ingesting and query logs. We're ingesting top users, and then we do what we call behavioral analytics on top of that, and we're figuring out things like what is the most popular set of assets. We're scoring all of that. You saw a little bit about the tagging, so we're doing a combination of things to add, let's say, contextual knowledge on top of what you would consider just technical metadata, and then those bots are kind of an advancement in autonomous governance, right? So we're really big on, and our vision is moving towards increased autonomy. And that's not to say to take governance people and stewards to reduce their impact and their effort, but it's to take the drudgery out of the work and to have the machines be able to take over policy standards and rules and to be able to monitor on stewards and governance organizations' behalf. And so anyway, that's a little bit of insight. Hope that helps answer the question. And I appreciate the question, Mark.
I will get right to the end. Peeling back that, machine learning data catalog, there was a Forrester wave that we were part of. It's been fundamental to it. I just want to add the idea that this behavioral analytics we do, it actually comes back on the other side. When people are using the catalog, it also is feeding in. And this is a way really to think about this problem at scale. And so I'm going to take that as our cue. We're going to give you guys a little wrap up to learn more. So, both Mike and what John showed you, and I really hope that you got it really came across. That is a live system. That was the system that was used at KPMG in coordination with the scripts to actually make the changes in Snowflake and then see the data back and forth. And we are setting up another session with EDM Council coming up on February 8th, oriented so it's both East Coast, but also we're making sure that our folks in EMEA can join to do a deep dive. So if you liked the John show, there will be more. And that is really, I think, a great chance for people to get in. We'll talk more about it. To learn more about Alation as the data catalog company, as the bringing data intelligence and how we do that, and how the catalog is actually really driven not just by AI, but by the human interactions that we support, all of those conversations and things that make the data come alive. We have a custom demo series. We've given you a ton of good resources about the CDMC, including some of our own work. We've been very busy talking about this work, CDMC blogs. We've got a link to the repo. So this slide is not just what's next, it's also a set of resources for you. And on my side, I want to say, any questions, John, you can do the same. And then we'll tee it up for Mike to finish it off.
Both of you, thank you very much, both for this presentation, what's coming up in February. So I encourage the audience to tune into that. And also for diving in as an early live example of implementing CDMC in a complex multi-cloud or cloud environment. So excellent work. Thank you very much. For our audience, here's what comes next at 4:20, which is we have two concurrent sessions. One sponsored and active with Orteca regarding what should I use, DCAM or CDMC? And then a parallel path, if you'd like to tune in for this, is with Ernst & Young covering graph platform capabilities and supporting ESG. So just go onto your agenda tab, pick out what's next, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And gentlemen, thank you again for a really informative session. Take care.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Mike.
See you out
Appreciate
there.
it.